When I decided to binge watch Emily in Paris, I expected a pink show with the clichés of life in Paris. However, I was surprised to find a show that could hold lots of truth inside all of the messiness of unrealistic scenarios.
But don't you want to go to the movies to escape life?
Thinking you can escape life is your problem. You can never escape life. Never.
Welcome to the French ending.
Hello everyone, this is Dance. Welcome to Patriaton. In today's video we wanted to talk about new Netflix show Emily in Paris. And yes, it is a cliché show about an American girl living in Paris. But if we're here only to criticize, we won't be able to see the bigger narrative behind these kinds of shows. So in case you have or haven't seen it, we're here to expand your view on yet another Darren Star show about, of course, young women getting their way in the elite world. First, in case you don't know Darren Star, he's the creator of Sex and the City, and Emily since what a millennial Carrie Bradshaw with a social media account would have achieved, and then Sex and the City wouldn't have existed, replacing a polluted New York City with a more environmentally friendly capital such as Paris. And in this way, it is a reflection of the production companies of each show. HBO serving the sex culture, while Netflix gives you the millennial approval seeker version of that. Now, the depiction of how the French are is very ignorant.
Oh, yes, of course I love Paris. And the food is so delicious, the fashion so chic, the lights so magical. But the people, so mean. I mean, they can't all be mean. Oh, yes, they can. Chinese people are mean behind your back. French people, mean to your face.
The cliché of the sex-driven, lazy, and rude French is only displayed to the advantage of the script to make Emily feel more of an outsider than she already was, when also her lack of interest of the new culture she's stepping into is way ruder.
Steak isn't cooked at all. Maybe you suggest you cook it longer? Yeah, I'll take yours. No. Come on, the customer is always right.
No, here the customer is never right.
Well, maybe I'll educate the chef a little bit about customer service.
You think you're gonna change the entire French culture by sending back a steak?
And in the end, both parties see the clichés of where they come from, and then they're punished for it. The cultural clichés of how Americans see the French, thanks to publicity, movies, and lack of information, and the French can see the typical American girl driven by the tech and tabloids culture she comes from.
And the best thing is, we can track everything. Who views what, when, where, and for how long.
What is she saying?
Also, Emily, coming from the cultural climate America is living right now, is appalled by the perspective the French have.
I don't understand. How is this sexist?
Well, whose dream is it anyway? The man or the woman?
And forgets to see that she's not surrounded by the broad and modern French view, but instead the elite and boomer approach of luxury businesses and marketing.
In today's climate, it could come off as politically incorrect.
Politically incorrect? Is this the Me Too?
And in this way, the biggest translation issue isn't the language,
What you mean when you say you want to be part of the solution?
but the communication between the mindsets of each. When Emily arrives at the marketing agency Savoy as the fresh and American view for their social media, she's quickly rejected by her peers. But Emily again fails to see the generational remarks and the culture she's stepping into.
Excuse me, what is this I just received from you?
It's about all of us sharing a global vision.
You would like to destroy our French soul.
And doesn't realize that her approach to the company as a millennial comes up as insulting to the boomer way of handle things.
You come to Paris, you walk into my office, you don't even bother to learn the language. You treat the city like it's your amusement park, and after a year of food, sex, wine, and maybe some culture, you'll go back from where you came.
And while this is not her fault, she takes personal when her boss rejects her. Every time. And perhaps her biggest mistake is to seek for her boss's approval, while also trying to incorporate the new ideas. But she doesn't realize that the legacy her boss is after.
I don't agree with your approach. You have no mystery. You're very, very obvious.
And her legacy are very different.
But I enjoy work and accomplishment. It makes me happy.
And both mindsets go through the generational dilemma of not being able to work together without compromising their pride to be always right.
You win.
We're on the same side.
Yeah, right.
Because in the end, as much control the boomer wants and can have, their need to control a younger generation comes from the fear of having their legacy mean nothing.
It's not you personally, it's everything you stand for. Your social media is a problem for us.
I don't think you understand its value.
Delete your account.
But as millennials or Gen Zs, we've come to learn the hard way that fear doesn't serve our purpose, and wanting to prove them wrong doesn't fix this issue.
Bonjour. I'm Emily in Paris, and I was invited on Instagram.
Another aspect that Emily has trouble seeing is that she naturally influences people with her charm and it-girl characteristics.
Oh my god, you have so many followers.
And that she has the mindset to use social media from the point of view of the consumer. And this is the transparency that companies lack. Emily doesn't see herself as an influencer and puts a lot of effort into making the company she works for appealing to the new social culture and accessible to her generation.
I'm just trying to imagine a social campaign that doesn't seem tone deaf to the cultural moment.
And this contradiction is what gets her in trouble. Throughout history, we've romanticized the girl that holds a certain type of charm but doesn't know it.
Emily in Paris. I like her, she's clever.
And therefore is praised for not trying.
I've been following you on Insta.
When in reality, this lack of drive inside their hierarchy of an old and millionaire company doesn't get you too far.
Perhaps you have something to learn from us, but I'm not sure if we have much to learn from you.
And Emily fails again to see that her managers only want to belong to the younger market because they feel entitled of this generation.
I'm asking Emily.
It doesn't matter what I think.
And she devotes her time fully for their growth, which they have so much resisted to take and understand.
I want to protect your brand.
And we need to protect ourselves from the morality police.
The valid point of the show is that since Emily's life is not about her followers, she's able to bring that fresh consumer's point of view to her work. And this is her drive. Being able to be among the people she always admired and sharing it online with an audience that actually craves the same thing.
You're clearly under the influence of this city. You're high on Paris, and your followers are falling for that.
An interesting analogy of the show is the circles it is constructed around, the never-ending cycle.
I feel like Alice through the looking glass. It's like up is down. I'll never learn the language or understand anything here. Do you realize the city is laid out in circles? Like they deliberately designed it to confuse us.
Paris has a very feminine energy which matches the circles the city is built on. Circles are the gender pictogram of femininity, and as Emily started her account with the name Emily in Paris, and all the things she experienced were very feminine-like, it sets a harmony inside all of the pattern and this Alice through the looking glass with the clock ticking through all of the confusions.
Better to just let it wash over you. Yeah, but that's just it. I'm worried I might drown.
Paris is also known as the City of Lights, and Emily finds herself between the blindness of the lights, immersing herself in these elite rich experiences and avoidance of realistic scenarios, but also the lightness of truth, not being able to escape from it.
It's so intense that you die and then you're reborn as a new person.
Of all contradictions of the show, the most problematic to me is the lack of explanations of the simple things when you arrive to a new country, separated by the language barrier, and all of this while living alone. Like most of Darren Star's characters, Emily is never seen cooking or struggling to use the subway, and her financial status is never talked about as a foreign in a more expensive country than hers. Emily never finds herself in self-deprivation, and conveniently, all situations align to benefit the storyline and gives Emily the eye candy life in Paris. And even her wardrobe is a contradiction, rejoicing herself to finally be able to meet these designers and experience being near the things she always loved.
We worship designers so much that we spend all we've saved on a dumb accessory just to feel like we're somehow on your runway. Without basic bitches like me, you wouldn't be fashionable.
But always describing herself as the visual consumer through the glass, while wearing Chanel, and never repeating outfits.
C'est only for VIP guests.
It's fine. They don't belong here anyway.
This contradiction keeps her from the consumer's point of view, since she already, through her wardrobe, entered the privileged closet she always wanted, and her prerogative of doing the right thing only appears to hold the show.
You are completely right. And I should not be here telling you what fashion is. You are the original.
But then is clouded by larger scenes of love interests and fancy dates.
Do you know what the French do when things are at their darkest? When the bombs were falling during World War II, do you know what they did?
Kid.
They made love.
No, dude. This puts the show back to the cliché sections instead of the opportunity for sex reflection to a younger generation. The gap between generations is full of contradictions and the obligation of adapting to a new era. It is confusing and makes us question our authority figures and our purpose. But the biggest struggle is being benefited by the system that's trying to keep itself alive, because we decide to not question them anymore, and start to get too comfortable with this more accessible life where we no longer feel excluded. So I have a few questions for you. How are we taking advantage of our privilege instead of being blinded by it? What would have happened to Emily had she taken seriously her role as a social media supervisor for a company so resistant to change, and these situations led her instead to her managers not accepting at all this behavior, regardless if she succeeded or not? And what would have happened if Emily had adapted to her environment to survive and always be reminded she was an outsider? In the end, when you're the person connecting with people by transporting them to the reality they wish they had, instead of the one that affects most of the world, you're not the it girl of the internet. You're the it girl of the traditional media. Avoiding getting these companies in trouble and not deciding you have that power through your phone, where people are willing to follow your criteria. And this lack of action, we've come to know, is not everlasting. Thank you so much everyone for watching. We really hope you enjoy our content, and please feel free to comment on the comment section and follow us on Instagram. Actually, we also have a highlight there called Emily in Paris, where we make a comparison between Emily in Paris and The Devil Wears Prada. So we really hope you find that interesting, and see you there. Bye!
Okay, that doesn't even make sense.
It's a perfume commercial, it's not supposed to make sense. De l'heure. A dream of beauty.